You're more powerful than you believe that you are. It's up to you to take that power.
My mission is to impact the hearts and minds of women, helping them change their stories and empowering them to love themselves, their bodies, and their lives. What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Change Your Story podcast. I'm Hannah Dawson, your host and transformation coach. I'm a certified personal trainer, nutritionist, mindset coach, writer, speaker, and creator of the Fit Club Babes app, and I am here to help you transform your life. While I love teaching all things nutrition and fitness, and trust me, you'll get lots of that on here, my true passion lies in the power of mindset and self-relationship. I know firsthand how powerful a mindset shift can be. It has profoundly impacted not only my health and fitness journey, but also my relationship with myself, and it can do the same for you too. Many women believe as we age, we lose our beauty, body, and health, but that's not true. You can feel and look amazing and get better with age, and I'm going to show you how. Are you ready to change your story? Let's flip the script one thought at a time. You guys, we have such a special episode on the Change Your Story podcast today. I am thrilled to have Ravinder Taylor with us. Ravinder is a mind science researcher and the author of Mind Training, The Science of Self-Empowerment, a book that brilliantly combines neuroscience with practical strategies for self-improvement. Are you ready? Let's go. Well, welcome to the Change Your Story podcast, Ravinder. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much. I hope you're feeling better.
You know what? I'm not fully. I don't know what is going around right now.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course, I think there is something going around. I had something, some virusy, something or other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hear a bit of an accent. What is your accent?
England. I was brought up in
England.
England. I was born in India, brought up in England.
Oh, wow. So that was actually going to be my first question was why don't you introduce yourself to the audience and just a little bit about your story and who you are and what you do and kind of what inspired you to write your book, Mind Training?
Okay, well, I am Ravinder Taylor, born in India, brought up in England, but I've spent the last 35 years in the United States. The power of the mind has always fascinated me. I've been researching it for, 35, 40 years now. I did a course in hypnosis and psychotherapy. But my approach is very, very practical. I like science. I love the science, and I like to keep the information very factual,
Mhm.
very solid. But it only means something to me if there are practical applications. How can I use it to become the best version of myself? How can I use it to help others become their best version as well?
Oh, I love that. I absolutely, I am fascinated with this topic. You're a neuroscientist, correct? Is that
I'm not a neuroscientist. I'm passionate about the
okay?
cognitive sciences.
Okay.
So my degree is actually microbiology,
Okay.
but I have been deep diving into the cognitive sciences, as I said, for around 35 years now.
Oh, wow. And can I ask what brought you there? Like, was there something in your life like that like triggered that or something that always inspired you or like how have you applied that to your life and kind of where did that story start for you?
I think I've always been interested in how the mind works. But yeah, there was definitely a triggering event. I was working as a microbiology in a path lab, and one day that all these flyers appeared around the hospital talking about a special presentation that was being given on hypnotherapy. Because it was being advertised by the hospital, it had a quasi endorsement to it. So I had always thought of hypnosis as things people did on stage, trying to make someone look silly, just for a laugh, just the entertainment. But I found the presentation fascinating. And there was one story in particular that really stuck out to me. And it was a story about a woman who had a pain in her arm. She'd had a pain in her arm for a long period, a decade or so. She had seen all the doctors, seen all the specialists, nothing had helped. And as a last resort, she was seeking hypnotherapy. Under hypnosis, they did a regression. They go back to the triggering event. And she remembered some emotional trauma. She had been upset over something. They didn't go into the details of what it was, but it had upset her at the time. After the hypnotherapy session, the pain had went right away. She didn't believe it, so she didn't contact the hypnotherapist until the day afterwards, but it had gone right away. And I found it fascinating that an old traumatic event from way back in the past could have an influence on her today. And it was like, what makes this work? What other influences are there in our past that are affecting our present in a negative way? Is there a way to uncover those? Is there a way to negate those? That's what triggered my entire journey. I went on to have hypnotherapy myself, discovered some really cool techniques like hypnotic drawing and hypnotic writing. I went and did a 3-year course in hypnosis and psychotherapy, and yeah, then it's history. It's just, I mean, I just carried on pursuing this, learning it, figuring it all out.
Wow, I think that is so amazing and incredible. Kind of reminds me of, do you know who Louise Hay is?
Of course.
Okay, so she kind of talks about, like she believed that every illness and dis-ease in your body it's an emotional, starts from trauma or something that like emotion, right? And so, yeah, I just think it's so cool. And I would love to hear more about your book and really what, I guess my biggest question for you is, what is the biggest message that if you could reach all women, what you would want them to hear? Like, what is that message? What is the thing that you wish all women would know about this, what you're teaching, about hypnotherapy, about the mindset, about the brain, about our thoughts, our belief systems, our limiting belief systems? What is that?
That your thoughts, they don't create your reality, but they definitely influence your reality. Most of that information is in your subconscious mind, but you do have the ability to rewrite that script by learning how the mind works, by learning how your mind gets programmed in the first place. You have the ability to make changes. So you don't have to be in charge. You don't have to be, just like a puppet on the strings, being controlled by your genes, by your life experiences. You have the ability to get into the driver's seat of your own life, and you can make significant changes. You're more powerful than you believe that you are. It's up to you to take that power.
Oh, I love that. I absolutely love that. Could you explain how we can start to rewire our brains? Like how to overcome these limited beliefs? Like what would that look like for the listeners? Like if they started to become aware of this, what could they do?
That's a really big subject, Hannah.
Mhm.
So there's different ways to approach that. Um, One of the things that we learn is that the subconscious mind is a repository of all of our experiences.
Mhm.
We tend to fixate on the negative experiences, so we remember those more, and we keep all of those stored in the subconscious mind. So every time someone has told us we can't do something, well, that's part of our programming. And then when we have opportunities today to do to improve our lives, we're held back by the belief that we can't. One of the things that I like to do in mind training, I go through Erickson's 8 stages of development. Now, I don't like everything that he goes on there. He tends to assign virtues to each age, because at each age, so from birth to 1.5, 1.5 to 3. He goes through all of these different stages and what you're supposed to learn. But it is really informative when you go and look at those. When you look at your own life and you say, there are these particular areas I'm not very good at. So for me, I was very aware that within me, there's a great deal of feelings of insecurity, inadequacy. I felt less than everybody else. And when you go through Erickson's 8 stages of development, I could see exactly, that stage of life for me between 10 and 18, thereabouts. Maybe a bit sooner than that. I'm trying to remember the actual different stages, but I could see exactly why I would feel less than everyone else. For me, it came down to being brought up in England at a time racism was a whole lot stronger. It simply was. It wasn't necessarily the overt stuff. It was this idea of this is the right way to do things, the British way,
Mhm.
and everything else was wrong. So if you did it differently, there was always that, oh, really? That people looking down at me, you do it that way, and that just got ingrained in me. So I always felt incredibly inadequate. But looking at these stages, when you see them frequently, when you uncover some of this programming in your subconscious mind, when it sees the light of day, it generally loses its power. Frequently, it can lose its power immediately. It can be startling. It doesn't always work that way, but there are frequent times when it sees the light of day, it doesn't hold any more power over you. So searching back in your past, and there's a time and a place to go in the past and figure out where issues come from, and a time just to focus on the future. But uncovering some of these past issues, as I said, can be pretty magical, actually.
Yeah. I think that's just incredible. So is this what you talk about in your book? Is this like explain a little bit of your book? Is it you taking the reader through how to like change their relationship with themselves, with their mind, with their belief system? What is it?
Mind training is all about getting into the driver's seat of your own life.
Mm.
I look at how we learn behaviors and therefore how we can change them, how we can start making the small changes. And I often talk about the small changes accumulate. And I don't mean by that it's, one step in a journey that is 100,000 steps, and each one, that's not what I am referring to. What happens is when you make some of these small changes, it actually changes your journey. So other things change as well. So it puts you on a much faster track. Mind training goes through all the science of how we learn behaviors, what makes us the person that we are. And then at the end of each chapter, because I wanted it to be very, very science-based. I draw on over 200 independent scientific studies in the book in order to create the tools and techniques that we have. But each chapter then will have a summary at the end of the chapter that explains why that information is important. But then there are exercises. There
Mhm.
are exercises that you can do to put them into practice. When you put them into practice, it becomes so much easier to remember everything. And it's not like the exercises are difficult. So there are small things that you can do. And I outline all of them at the end of every single chapter in the book. There are small things that you can do to start creating changes right now to make your today better than yesterday.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And so most of my audience, well, I would say, probably 99% is women and women that are just really on a journey to changing their story. And that's, why I named it Change Your Story, because I had a moment in my life where I overcame all of this abuse, all of this addiction. And from the outside, my life looked good, but I realized that my story hadn't changed, that life shifted, and I made these outwardly
better choices, but in my mind, that story was still keeping me stuck. And so that's why I created this podcast. And so I know a lot of women on here are going through that same thing. It's like they're doing all of the things that they think that they should, but they still feel like stuck in this mental jail. That's all I can explain is like you just feel like you're doing the things, but you don't feel changed, right? And so how does that kind of resonate? Like, what would you have to say to that and to them?
I love supporting women. The older I get, the more I value the sisterhood. I
Mhm.
love being a woman
Yeah.
in everything that that means. But women have had um, particular challenges put on them. You know, men do this, women do that. A woman's place is in the home. And even when lots of that information is older now, it really isn't. So
Hmm.
we still get guided by that. So women in general, in a household, they're the ones that are going to take responsibility for the cleaning.
Hmm.
And guys will often say, "Well, just tell me what to do." But no one tells a woman what to do. You see something dirty, you see something that needs to be done, and you go do it. So there are challenges there. There are challenges just to do with the weaker race,
Hmm.
the weaker sex, not the race. Um, these things influence us and it goes on everywhere. One of the things that I really object to, there are lots of memes that go on and they go on in both directions. It's not only women that get targeted, but the woman is frequently portrayed as in a relationship as the nag, you know. Men are often portrayed as not being in touch with their feelings. And so these kinds of memes I work to get away from. That the jokes can be funny, but they're old. It's a bit like the old blonde jokes, you
Hmm.
know. They just get perpetuated out there. And even when you know that it's just a joke, it still has an influence on you.
Hmm.
So we do have challenges. Some of my work in mind training, I go through Freud and how he came to some of his ideas that the subconscious mind has so much power. And what he was doing was he was working with women who were dealing with female hysteria. Now, this was, back in the 1900s. Um, the idea was that when women were they were weaker, they were more emotional, they were unable to control their emotions, and so they would faint and have hysterics and all of this kind of stuff. But it was actually a condition, female hysteria. Now, it was in the DSM, I discovered, it didn't come out of the DSM, that's the diagnostic manual, until about a year before I went away to university. So while I was preparing to go to college, I could still have been diagnosed with female hysteria, which amongst the symptoms is a proclivity to like poetry and reading. But this packages us as the weaker race. So these things still carry on, and we have advantages where in America, which is really advanced compared to the world, but there is still a ways for us to go. So there is this automatic programming that goes on, and it's up to us to realize that we don't have to own it anymore. It
Hmm.
doesn't have to be part of our story. It's there in our environment. So today I will pay attention to the kinds of TV that I consume.
Hmm.
If women are being portrayed in a weaker role, I'll turn it off. I like to watch entertainment that, where the woman is strong and capable and creative. And I'm not talking about competing with men. I'm not talking about being the same as men. But when women fully come into their power, we have our own talents and abilities. We need to enjoy those and appreciate those. So I will surround myself with females who are stronger. I'm not going to surround myself with females who are always subservient. That doesn't do it for me. There are lots out there. So you can choose your environment, and there is that old expression that you are as successful as the six people that are closest to you. Well, that holds everywhere. So when it comes to your relationships, if the people that you're surrounded by are strong in their relationships, then your relationship's going to be stronger. If the people around you are constantly complaining about their husbands, that's all you're going to see in your husband too.
Mhm.
So you pay attention to the information as it comes in.
Yeah. Wow. That's really powerful. I was just thinking when you were saying all that, you know, just thinking about generationally, right? How do you believe with all of your education and all that you've learned that thought patterns can be passed down generationally, like genetically, like in your cells, in your being, when you give birth to your children, generationally, if there has been, I guess, whether it's addiction, whether it's well, I mean addiction can be in all different sorts of things, whether it's a mentality, poverty. Do you think that gets passed down unless you do what you're saying now in your book is like that mind training, like where you're really breaking free from those belief systems? Because I guess what I'm trying to say is belief systems get passed down. Do you believe that?
There's definite scientific evidence that would indicate that. They've
Mhm.
actually looked at women who were pregnant and they were going through some kind of famine, where food was scarce, and that does get passed on to the children. That whole idea. So those children would have a tendency towards obesity a whole lot more. So there is definitely some of that stuff that gets passed on, but there's also it's not the genetics, but the parenting style, your parents, the kinds of challenges they have. They model to you what is normal, and it would have been modeled to them by their parents. So there is a great deal that does get passed on. So it is important to be more mindful about your thoughts. So rather than saying that this is always the norm, like women are the weaker sex, you say, are they? Are they really? What does it mean to be weaker physically? Most of us, guys tend to be physically stronger, but not always.
Mhm.
And it's not across the board. There are certainly instances where females are physically stronger than men. But being mindful of these beliefs, these memes, we take on information in ways that is really hard to fathom. One of the things that I talk about in mind training has to do with the placebo effect. The
Mhm.
placebo effect is a great example of your mind's body to heal you. It can heal you, it can hurt you, it can help you create prosperity, it can create poverty and lack. It's all there in the mind. But with the placebo effect, some of the research that I found particularly fascinating was when they looked at it globally. So, what I found was that the placebo response for hypertensive drugs is particularly low in Germany. But when they look at the placebo effect for gastric ulcers, it's particularly low in Brazil, but it's higher in Europe and it's highest in Germany. So we take on board information. It's like, how does your country influence how you react to a placebo pill? You
Mhm.
know, I found that absolutely fascinating, but it is a great indicator of how much information we take on board subliminally. We
Mhm.
don't know that it's there. And one of the tools that I include, it's only one of the tools. There's lots of different tools in mind training, but one of the tools I talk about is our subliminal self-help programs. Now, subliminal has did gain a bit of a bad rap, but I go through the entire history of that. That's in the appendix of my training where I go through. Um, there are vested interests in trying to prove that subliminal communication doesn't work, but today it is pretty solid. There have been a couple of meta-analyses where they take all the research that has been done and combine it all together to look for statistical significance. So today, subliminal communication is a known fact. And so subliminal self-help programs, I've said that the subconscious mind holds all of this negative information. It holds these beliefs. And that is what prompts our actions today. So you make a choice. They've actually shown there's activity in the subconscious mind before you make the choice. So up to 7 seconds earlier, there is activity in the subconscious mind. So when it comes to subliminal self-help programs, see, that bypasses the conscious centuries. So if you tell yourself, say, I am good, well, if you're being really thoughtful about it, you're going to say, well, what does good mean? Well, I'm not really that good. I was kind of mean to my friend yesterday, or I was rather impatient here. So what does it mean? So you equivocate and you justify. But the advantage of a correctly created subliminal self-help program is it bypasses all of that and it goes directly into the subconscious mind. So to give you an example of how it works, have you ever been at a big event, a party or something, and you're deep in your conversation, there's conversations going on all around, and then someone says something that is significant to you. Maybe they mention your name and your ears prick up. You hear it and you start paying attention. Well, your subconscious mind was tending this information. It alerted you when there was something important that comes along. Now, we talk to ourselves constantly. On a good day, that's like, this is fun. I enjoy this. I like being with people. On a bad day, I can't wait till I get home. I'm tired. I'm fed up. Everyone hates me. I can't do this. We talk to ourselves nonstop, but that talk is going to influence our experience. When you have a correctly created subliminal self-help program, it bypasses all of that and it inputs the positive affirmations deep into your subconscious mind. So it changes it. You start to repeat the affirmations on the program. And so you think about it, if you're feeling depressed and that self-talk says, I'm tired, I'm fed up, I can't do this. If you replace that with, this is fun, life is good, you can't be depressed at the same time. It's physically impossible.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, there's so much to that. Like that's so much wisdom. Thank you so much. And I believe every little bit of it. I think, what was coming to mind when you were talking about that is this is what I talk about all the time with my community and women is just the power of your inner dialogue, right? Because that's what you were saying is that's the conversation that you're having with yourself. And we're not taught as little girls that we need to have a relationship with ourselves. We're always taught to take care of other people, that other people come first. And we're not taught, how to respect ourselves, how to love ourselves, how to put ourselves first, because what goes in us comes out of us. And so I guess my question for you is, speaking kind of to the audience and to women, what does that look like when it comes to their self relationship and their body and how they feel about their character and their values and yeah, I guess that's it, is just self relationship. What would you have to say to that?
Your self-talk is a mirror on your inner beliefs. Those deep beliefs that are in the subconscious mind that you're not paying attention to, but your self-talk is a mirror of that. So every time you tell yourself you can't, you're putting a barrier, a ceiling on your ability to achieve everything. Every time you are self-conscious because you don't feel pretty enough, or you don't, you have to do all of this stuff in order to fit in. I would say practicing mindfulness, paying attention to your thoughts, that is really informative, and then finding ways to change that. So the inner talk subliminal programs, those are the programs that we actually put out here. They've been researched by numerous independent universities and institutions and been demonstrated effective at priming your self-talk. That talk that comes out, and you want to make that self-talk positive. So for a woman and her relationship with herself, pay attention to your thoughts and then question them.
I love that.
Question them. Don't take it as gospel that that is just fact. If someone's told you that you're not capable of something, well, what do they know?
Hmm.
What do they know? They don't know everything about you. Um, so you pay attention to these things, and being aware that without negativity bias, we hold on to those things a whole lot more. So it becomes more important to practice self-care, self-nurturing. You have to learn to love yourself.
Yeah.
You have to learn to appreciate yourself and your talents and abilities. And so if you can find friends who are going to be supportive, then hold on to them. If you've got people in your circle who bring you down, distance yourself from them.
Yeah.
That isn't going to do it. It is wonderful being a woman. There are so many aspects to that, our instincts to nurture. Well, that can be good and bad. We like to nurture. I love nurturing my children. I love nurturing my indoor plants.
Yeah.
That brings me a great deal of fulfillment. But it can be abused when maybe, if your partner takes advantage of it. So you have to turn that care back to yourself.
Hmm.
You have to learn to respect yourself and honor yourself. And you do that by paying attention to the beliefs you have and the kinds of ideas that society keeps trying to put on us.
I love that. You were talking about just earlier, and it kind of has to do kind of going into what you're saying now is mindfulness. Can you explain a little bit of what that would mean to be like mindful of that inner dialogue, of that talk, self-talk? What does that mean?
Mindfulness is a great subject. I have to admit, for a while it became a bit of a buzzword. Everyone was practicing mindfulness. And when I was doing my research into it, I didn't get it because most of the research that I was coming across then was really about meditation.
Hmm.
Well, meditation works. It's a great technique, but what made mindfulness any different? You just take the word itself. Mindfulness is paying attention to your thoughts. So I disregarded mindfulness up until pretty recently. But now I've been researching the work of Ellen Langer, and she takes it. She has a book on mindfulness, and I would recommend that. I should be recommending my own book. I'll recommend Ellen Langer's book because that it goes into it in great depth. But it is to do with um, thinking again about your thoughts, thinking again about your beliefs. I was talking to someone earlier today, and she said to me that when she was in her early 20s, the doctor had told her, had made all these predictions. You're going to have back problems, you're going to hit menopause early, you're going to have depression, all of these things, a whole bunch of them. Now, what we know in the cognitive sciences is that when an authority figure tells you something, your prefrontal cortex shuts down. That is your ability to discern and make your own judgments. You turn it all over to the authority figure. And so that can easily become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Mhm.
So questioning people, don't just take what they tell you on face value. Don't take your own beliefs on face value. There are so many things that are considered normal. But if you look back, history can show us that what is normal isn't necessarily correct.
Yeah.
The big example, of course, is going to be black slavery. It was considered the norm.
Yeah.
We know that to be just so absolutely wrong. I remember as a child, as I was thinking about this, and you know, some of these things can be a little painful to think about. But when I was a kid growing up in England, homosexuality was really looked down upon. It was so common that even when I was in elementary school, so I was 7, 8, 9 years old, making jokes that were anti-gay was just the norm. It was on TV. It was everywhere.
Mhm. Yeah.
It was the norm. Today we know that to be wrong. So for me, I look out now at the world and say, okay, if we could miss that back then, if we didn't realize it back then, what am I missing today? What norm is being foisted upon me? There is still this idea that women are the weaker sex. It's like, well, forget that. What does weaker mean? So mindfulness is about paying attention to all of these ideas, being aware that everyone has got their talents and abilities. You're not going to be the best at everything, but you are going to be special in your own unique way.
Yeah.
You have your own talents and abilities, and you want to maximize those. You want to look at your strengths, look at everything that you have. And when someone tells you that you have a weakness in some area, don't believe it. Don't
Yeah.
believe it, because you have the ability to change it. You have the ability to become more.
Absolutely. I just love that. And I was just thinking about, just working with women as a personal trainer and as a coach, and just hearing a lot of women will talk about, their family history, right? Like with like arthritis, or my mom had depression and so I'm going to have depression, or like hip surgery, or all these things. Then women will take these on and they like almost manifest it in their life, like, oh, it's just age now. This is like normal to not feel good. This is like, it's like, what? Like, we need to start questioning, like, are we just believing this lie? So we're actually like starting to, manifest it in our lives. Are we starting to recreate, you know, that pattern? So I just think that's so cool that you are just mindfulness, thinking about what you're thinking about. I love that. Thank you so much for all of this. Like I know it's going to bless the listeners. Before we finish up here, just a few tips that you could leave with the listeners today, of like how they could start implementing this, whether it's getting your book. What is it that they could start doing today to start working on training their mind?
Understand that it's a two-way street. Your mind and your life experiences, how you're feeling. So, for example, when we're happy, we smile. Well, that's a two-way street, because if you smile, even if you fake a smile, your brain will produce happy brain chemicals. I'm very much into nurturing ourselves. So one of the techniques that I have started doing the past few years, it doesn't have to take a great deal of time, but when I go to the bathroom, I'll wash my hands. I will take just a few seconds to be mindful of the process. It's not just a job to get done and out of the way. I take a few seconds to appreciate the warmth of the water over my hands, the lather on my hands. I get into the process, because when you're doing that, you are turning on happy brain chemicals. You are reducing stress. You want to find opportunities to reduce stress. But the other thing that I will do is I will look in the mirror. I will smile at myself, because that's automatically gonna, you know, turn on the endorphin, the serotonin. You just smile and you're gonna feel better. And I'll tell myself, I will be my own cheerleader. And
Yeah.
I'll say, you've got this, Ravinder. You can do it. It's a good day. And it takes seconds.
Yeah.
You know, it's just the time it takes to wash your hands, but you can cause a shift in your system so that you're not necessarily just focusing on the negative, and it extends everywhere. So when you're feeling depressed and down, you know, you will hunch your shoulders. When you're feeling stressed, you feel your body tighten up. Physically, you know, when you're in those situations, turn it off. You know, physically, you have more power than you think. You
Mhm.
can create your life experience. You can create a happier moment right now just by smiling at yourself, maybe stepping outside, getting a bit of sun, because once again, that will turn on endorphin and serotonin. Hug your partner, hug your dog, get a boost of oxytocin. It's a two-way street. You have all of these controls, and I explain all of them in mind training. Loads of techniques. They're not difficult. They're not difficult, but you can change your life today and create a happier, healthier you without those false glass ceilings.
Oh my gosh, I just love it. Thank you so much. Um, Speaking of your book, where can people find you? Where can they buy your book? Where are you hanging out if they wanted to get in touch with more that you offer? Where is that?
The book is Mind Training, The Science of Self-Empowerment. You can buy it from all good bookstores, Amazon, Barnes& and Noble. If your local bookstore doesn't have it, they can order it.
Okay.
To learn more about me, you can visit my website, that is ravindertaylor.com. I also love interacting with people. I like getting feedback. So if you have enjoyed this presentation, if you read the book, I would love to get your feedback on it. And you can email me directly simply at ravindertaylor.com. And of course, I'm on social networking too. You can search for me just under Ravinder Taylor. I love interacting with people. It's the sense of community that makes life so valuable. And the sisterhood is particularly special and becoming more and more special to me as time goes on.
Absolutely. I love it. And just for all of our listeners, I will put Ravinder's all her information below in the show notes, so that you can just go directly to her, buy her book on Amazon. Thank you so much, Ravinder. Like, this was a very special episode. I was so looking forward to getting to talk to you and hear your brilliant mind and your story. And I just feel so blessed. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Hannah. I've enjoyed our conversation. You do wonderful work.